No, that's gonna, the S3 sound, that third sound, is normal to a certain age in life.
Okay.
Okay? And hopefully by the time you're 30, it's no longer there. You get to my age, and they tell you there is a heart murmur, all right? And then they're like, oh, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, excuse me? No. Go check this out. Which is what happened. So, you know, like I said, my doctor's really good. So these phases that happen, okay, diastole, systole, okay, where we are going to have contraction, relaxation. We have terms that go along with whether that ventricle is in contraction, in relaxation, or the, whether it's basically iso, meaning the same, that little period of time where it's neither contracting or relaxing, it's at the plateau, okay? Letting us know what's happening to the blood flow, okay? So in the blood flow, as we go through one heartbeat, okay, one cycle, we'll have ventricles fill up. We will have the amount of blood be the same, okay? We'll have the blood pushed out, the ejection, and then the blood amount be the same during the recovery. Remember, the cardiac cycle is pretty much based on what is happening in the ventricles. So all four of these will occur. Basically, the blood amounts will be the same. We'll get the filling into the ventricles, then we get the ejection out of the ventricles, one into the pulmonary, one into the systemic, into the aorta, and the blood will be the same, and we relax and start all over again. Those are the four cycles, the four filling of the blood phases that should be present. Your book is going to go into greater detail, but like I said, if you were going to be a cardiologist, I would go into greater detail. When we are at rest, as you sit here now, just sort of listening, not like running up and down the stairs. This entire process for a cardiac cycle, filling of the atria, their contraction, filling of the ventricles, their contraction. This should be occurring about every 0.8 seconds, resulting in a heartbeat of roughly 75 beats per minute. If you were to sit there, gotta watch your clock, okay? Do it for the 10 seconds, multiply by 6. If you can't do the math, sit there and count it for the whole 60 seconds. All right? You should be able to determine a person's heart rate, which once again is clinically significant. This is a graphic showing that filling and ejection with those cycles that occur, with basically the filling, the same, the ejection, relaxation, starting all over again. Those cycles. This chart up here shows, now this is kind of cool, it shows what's happening in relationship to the ECG, and it's showing what's happening in relationship to the sounds that you hear.
Do you know what caused like constant increased heart rate? Because my mom just got admitted to the hospital yesterday with that issue.
There's lots of things. It could be hormones, it could be electrolytes. I mean, there are so many things. Hopefully the doctor will start somewhere. Probably most likely at the electrolytes and move from that point forward. So if we think about the volume of the blood, because your textbook is going to talk to you about the volumes. And it's going to give you some math and all that. I don't care about that, okay? There is a normal amount of fluid, blood, okay, that should be moving through the heart every heartbeat. If that amount of blood, it should be slide 51, okay? If that amount of blood is different in any way, there are going to be problems. Now, one that's going to be very familiar, that you'll hear probably quite a lot depending on what area you go into, congestive heart failure. Have you ever heard of that? Do you actually know what it means? Mm-mm. You'll hear them say, well, they're in congestive heart failure. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the heart's failing. What does that mean? All right. If either ventricle, the right or the left, does not eject that blood properly, that is going to do something to their body. The right side of the heart ejects the blood into the pulmonary circuit. The left side of the heart ejects it into the systemic circuit. Either of these don't work correctly, that is going to be affected. So, usually, this is a result of someone having either a heart attack, chronic hypertension, meaning they've had high blood pressure for the majority of their life. Something could be wrong with their valves, or there could be congenital defects in the heart. If any of this is present, if anything is going to affect the failure of the ventricles to eject the blood, something happens in the corresponding circuit. If it is the left ventricle, that is wrong. Blood backs up into the lungs. This leads to pulmonary edema, fluid on the lungs. Usually the people have shortness of breath, they feel like they're suffocating. Many times they have to go in and remove the fluid from the lungs.
Would smoking perpetuate that or cause it?
Oh, yes, ma'am. And I mean smoking of anything. Okay? Not just cigarettes. They like to put a lot of the problems on cigarettes alone, but it's technically smoking of anything. Huh? Vapes? See, the problem with vaping, we don't know the effects. It is something new, but what we do know is it's heavy metal. And heavy metal has nowhere to go but settle in the tissues. And people think vaping is so great, such an alternative to cigarettes. Just saying. Right ventricular failure, meaning the right ventricle. This is going to back up in the vena cava, and it's going to be generalized edema. Edema throughout the rest of the body. When it happens to the liver, it's ascites. We can well, let me rephrase. We can have enlargement of the liver if it is collecting on the liver. If it is collecting in the abdominal cavity as a whole, it's usually where, their arms and their legs don't match their middle, and it's very protuberant and hard. It's actually hard. It's not a nice squishy belly, okay? And that's ascites. We can have the veins be affected. We can get swelling, feet, ankles, arms, legs, wrists. However sedentary you are is going to determine how much is going to swell. Eventually, this backing up of the blood, whether we back up into the lungs or we back up into the general system as a whole, that's going to lead to the heart failing altogether because it is not moving the blood properly. And I really don't know if there's much they can do besides like high doses of fluid pills and then removing fluid like from the lungs and stuff. I really don't know if there's any other treatment for this or not.
For both. You're saying for both
Right.
pulmonary and...
The pulmonary edema, they can go in and they can remove the fluid off the lungs. But if the heart is in congestive heart failure, it's going to come back.
You know how you said like the whole like feeling hard?
Mm-hmm.
When people have cirrhosis of the liver, their stomach extends and it's hard too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's different. This is like totally...
That's because the liver has grown to a size that it shouldn't be. And see, the last thing the liver wants to do is duplicate its cells. But when people have abused their liver with, say, for example, alcohol, which is one of the major causes of cirrhosis of the liver, their liver has had to not only work to detoxify the alcohol out of their system, it has had to continue trying to do everything else that the liver does. So what it does is it duplicates its cells, which is not something the liver does unless it absolutely has to. So yeah, it gets enlarged and takes over more space in the abdomen. Not something it really wants to do. So this is showing where if the left ventricle pumps less than the right, basically blood is going to back up in the lungs and cause the pulmonary edema. If we have the right pumping less, we're going to find buildup in the rest of the systems. Neither one of these is a very desirable outcome. All right? Not at all. So when the heart beats and we deal with the output of the blood, we term it cardiac output. Kind of fitting.